Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the now famous quotation from Star Wars when Yoda says to Luke, "Do or do not, there is no try." I think there's a lot of great information, a lot of great psychological insights in this quotation, especially if you're stagnant. And especially if it's the kind of stagnation where the harder you seem to try to work out of it, the more stagnant you become, like a Chinese finger trap kind of scenario. And I also think it's relevant if anybody's ever made fun of you, or if you've ever felt like you were a try-hard. Like it took you way more effort to get from point A to point B than it did for most people. Maybe that's just in your imagination. But even if it is in your imagination, I still think this is relevant. And yeah, it's a famous quotation. And so people have analyzed this before, and the consensus seems to be what it means when you say "I'll try" is it means you're not really committed to do whatever the task at hand is. And while I think that's true, the question remains. A lot of the good nuggets here are going to be in analyzing that. Well, why would you work on something? Why would you put effort into something? Why would you try if you're not committed to do that thing? It doesn't make sense. Well, on the surface, it doesn't make sense. I really think there's two main reasons why you would work on something even though you're not committed. Well, three. Right? Yeah, I have three here. Well, the first one's kind of obvious. I just want to get that out of the way. We'll call it the 0th reason. Try implies you don't want whatever that thing is that you're working on. You just don't want it. In the context of Yoda and Luke, Yoda wants Luke to lift up that spaceship out of the swamp, that bog area. That's what Yoda wants Luke to do. Luke doesn't really want it. Luke doesn't really think it's possible. So rather than communicate to that issue, Luke has no choice, but to communicate passive aggressively by saying, "I'll try." That's true in a micro context, in that conversation, but I think it's also true in a macro context of why are you in law school, for instance? Is it because you really want to be a lawyer, or do you think other people will think you're cool? Why do you want to be a doctor? Is it because you really want to be a doctor, or is it because it'll keep your mom or your dad off your back? Right? And while avoidance can be really good motivation short term, long term it's really poor motivation. And I think a lot of the effort you put into doing something will look a lot less like doing and more like trying, because your whole life is based on passive aggressiveness anyways. You'll live your life in you'll communicate in a passive aggressive way by saying "I'll try," and you'll live your life that way. So I think that's the first reason, just to get out of the way. But the second reason, or the first reason, I guess we could say the first main reason why would you work on something even though you're not committed, is because I would say just simply hide. Success has its own payoff, of course. It feels good. Status feels great. But hiding has its own payoff too. The thing with status, or the downside of status, is that when you're successful, people notice. When people notice and they criticize, and they may criticize you in a way that you don't really want to be criticized. You maybe call them haters, even though there may be a nugget of truth in what they say. And you want to avoid that. And it could be the case that whenever you work and whenever you pour effort into something, on the one hand, yes, I'm not trying to gaslight you. You do want to be successful, but there's just a more powerful part of you that wants to hide. And there's a great payoff to hiding. We're going to get to that in our next session, in our next reason why you would not be committed to something you're working on. But I think this is a good time for a 2x2 diagram, and we'll add to it. So we'll do this. On the left here we have effort. This is low effort, and this is, we'll call it high effort. Effort's more of a continuum, right? But whatever. And here we have what this would be, not avoidance, right? This would be unhealthy avoidance. You're not really working to get the thing that you really want. And here would be, what's the opposite of avoidance? Of course, confrontation. So if there's low effort and you're avoiding, I mean, this is the burnout. Not really doing anything with your life. What if there's low effort, but you're confronting whatever the issue is? Well, you're just not thinking about it. I mean, it's a big goose egg here. You know, something I think of here is architecture. I'm not an architect. But I'm somewhat interested in it, so I don't know if it's the best example. But I just don't think about it that often, except when I go on a tour of a Frank Lloyd Wright house, and then I am in kind of awe of it, and I try to connect, you know, the principles of architecture with what I do, because all knowledge is connected. So maybe you're not really, it's just a big goose egg for you. You don't think about it, where every once in a while maybe there's just some awe and reverence and some self-reflection. So what if you're in avoidance, but you're putting in a lot of effort? Well, this is when you are a try-hard, right? If there's a lot of effort and you're facing the issue, well, this is when you do. Yeah. So that's it, right? You're wanting to hide. You're putting a lot of effort in, but you're also avoiding. So it just comes off as you trying really hard. And when people make fun of you for being a tryhard, or when you get upset at yourself for being a tryhard, it's not the trying. Right? It's good to try and put effort in, but if you do it for the sake of hiding, then it's going to come off looking like, you know, pathetic desperation. You know, the great dichotomy in that movie Glengarry Glen Ross. There's Gil, and then there's Alec Baldwin's character. I think Gil and Alec Baldwin, they both seem like they put a lot of effort in. The only difference is Gil's not having a conversation that he needs to have with his parents. Alec Baldwin had that conversation. So he can work, speak, communicate, put effort directly on the issue, not a little bit to the side, so he can get to hide and struggle and be a victim. And of course, that's the second reason why you would work on something, put effort into something, yet not really be committed, is because of the payoff that usually comes from hiding, which is struggle. And struggle can be very meaningful. I'll try, usually when you say, not that it's always wrong to say I'll try, but I'll try can usually be, is usually synonymous, it's a euphemism for I'll struggle. Hey Mark, can you do that assignment that I asked you to do? I'll try. What that means is I'll struggle. I'll struggle to do it because I don't really want it, because when you gave me that order or that task to do that assignment, there was some communication there that there was some feeling I had unconsciously that I didn't communicate to you, of course, because I wasn't feeling it. And so now I have a great opportunity to feel like a victim and to feel self-righteous and tell you how much smarter I am than you are, which is really relevant if you actually are smarter than the person. Then it just makes it worse. Right? Then it just makes it worse, because now your victimhood and your self-righteousness, the things are true, but what isn't true is why you're in that is that situation in the first place, because you didn't communicate that, right? I think very much of the scene in Moby Dick when the Pequod's going down in the Pacific, and here they see coming the other way is the ship fittingly called the Bachelor, and they're full of oil. They're going back to port, to Nantucket or whatever. They're going to make a lot of money. They're having a great party. There's whale blubber everywhere. And the Pequod could be doing that. But what's wrong with the Pequod? Is they're fighting nature, right? They want to struggle. They're fighting the fact that A is A. And that's why they struggle. And that's just a great scene in the book, because it really encapsulates that well. So, yeah, why do you say I'll try? Is because you have issues around whatever that thing is that you are supposedly want to get. And it's true, you know, I've said it before. If you want something and you really want that thing for its own sake, that's the key. If you want that thing for its own sake, you will get it. You will get it. Otherwise, you wouldn't want it. You wouldn't even think to get it unless you wanted it for its own sake. Now, when you start to want things for secondary payoffs, and you think it's like it becomes a pretense of something else, like maybe going to law school or medical school. Not that these things are wrong, but I see very serious young men get into these paths in life because there's a pretense to it, and life becomes a huge struggle for them. They're caught trying a lot. That may not be because they're dumb or anything like that, but they just don't really want that thing. You know, why do you want the money? Is it because you think it'll make you look cool, or is it because it's an end in itself, or it's a means to some other end that you really care about? Right? That's a huge difference. Why do you want that girlfriend? Is it because you think other people will now think you're cool if you get a girlfriend who looks a certain way? Well, there's just going to be a lot of trying, a lot of struggle, because you're constantly going to be at war with yourself. And once you clear up those issues, I think that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah, and this feels unfair. This really feels unfair. It must have felt really unfair to Luke when Yoda said, "Do or do not, there is no try." But where trying is way more than enough? You don't even have to try. All you got to do is try to try. And of course, I'm talking about therapy. Therapy is not about do or do not. If it is, then that's not really therapy. It's just a coach. It's a self-help book. Therapy is about trying. Can you try to show up? Can you try to talk through your emotions in a particular way? Can you try to focus on the main issue in your life? Can you try to focus on the unconscious pattern in your life that leads to whatever problems are presenting out there, that leads to your symptoms that you think are the problem, though not really your problem? When you show up to group, can you try to listen to what other people say in the group, which is really the benefit of group? Can you try to be open to feedback? Can you try to try? That's all you got to do. Then you go there to therapy, you learn how to communicate, you learn how to speak directly to the issue, you learn how to feel feelings, emotions, thoughts, no matter who you're around, your own feelings, emotion, thoughts. You'll get to that place, just have to try to get to that place, and you don't have to try that hard when you do it correctly, and eventually you'll just find yourself going from try hard to doing, or maybe you've been trying hard for so long you just realize, I'm not going to get any girls doing this, I'm just going to be a burnout. You're going to get a lot more girls, being a burnout. Probably not the right kind of girls, right? But yeah, and that's what I can help you with here, right? I want, if you find yourself trying, and that's all you can do, well, go to a place where trying is more than enough, and we'll get you here. We do free consultations, but I think more important, if you just want to learn more about the therapy that I do, go to joinanimus.com/feature. There's a video there that explains things. And remember, there's no use trying because there's nothing to try.